The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. You know, can Iran accomplish regime change in Washington? I told Newsmax on Friday that President Trump risks being drawn into a prolonged conflict with Iran by overestimating how much the U.S. military force can change the regime's nihilistic behavior. I said that after U.S. forces had struck the military targets on Iran's Krog Island, warning that further threats to the Strait of ships to international shipping to the Strait of Hormuz would lead to the island's infrastructure being destroyed. Krog Island is Iran's primary export terminal. Trump said Friday that U.S. forces had obliterated military targets on Krog Island and warned that the oil infrastructure could be next. Not for reasons of decency. For reasons of decency, they've chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Straits of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider that decision. During the interview, I said that I was worried that Trump could repeat mistakes made by other presidents who believed that overwhelming American military power would be enough to defeat adversaries willing to absorb heavy costs without changing their behavior. I said, I'm concerned that Trump is falling into a trap that Lyndon Johnson and George Bush 41 and Bush 43 have all fallen into before. Presidents can lose public support and re-election prospects when they become stuck in conflicts that do not confirm conventional assumptions about deterrence. Iran's leaders may not view the war costs the way the U.S. officials do. I'm worried that Trump's commitment to the overwhelming military force that we have is blinding him to acknowledge the overwhelming refusal of the Iranians to really care. Iranians are not bent on advancing their own goals, and are only bent on advancing their own goals, and will not be deterred. Washington is in effect applying its own standards to the conflict against an adversary that might accept losses the U.S. would find politically or strategically intolerable. I think that really what's happening here is that we're saying that we're applying our own values and standards to this war, and saying these prices would be unacceptable to the American people and unacceptable to us. But they're acceptable to the Ayatollahs and they're acceptable to the Iranian leadership.
Right.
A miscalculation in expectations could leave Trump trapped into widening conflict, drawing a historical parallel to Iraq. And I'm worried that we're getting stuck in Iran in much the same way that Bush 43 got us stuck in Iraq.
So, Dick, did you send that to the president?
Yeah, I sent it to him in several different ways and did it on television and on radio. And my point is that when you look at the world from inside the White House, the American power appears totally overwhelming. But when you look at it from Tehran and from their point of view, the terrorist cells, they think that as long as they're willing to fight to the death, they cannot be defeated.
They have nothing to lose, basically.
Yeah. And I'm worried that that miscalculation is the same miscalculation that went on. Johnson made that miscalculation in Vietnam. Bush 41 made that miscalculation. Bush 43 made it. And Biden made the same miscalculation. And we have to realize that these crazies are prepared to pay any price and accept any pain in order to win. And we think that by raising the force level and raising the threat level to a level that's unacceptable to most people, it will be unacceptable to the people who are backing the Iranian regime. And I'm not sure that that's the case.
Well, I believe now, once Trump hears this and listens to you, he's probably thinking that anyway. He's pretty sharp. But now that he heard your words, he's definitely going to at least think about it. And he's smart enough to say, it's actual, that's probable, and maybe he should think about how he goes forward. I really believe he does, and he will.
We always fail to realize that a massive military arsenal is no match for our enemy's fanaticism. It's easy to see how military superiority could lead Trump to overconfidence and his administration to hubris. The solution is for Trump to abandon regime change as his goal. Abandon regime change in Iran as his goal. Instead, focus on denying Iran the ability to spread terror around the world. Don't predicate our victory or defeat on our ability to make terror unreasonable. We must not let our easy win in Venezuela lead us to believe that we persuade the zealots in Iran to act rationally. But we can make it impossible for the Iranian regime to spread terror throughout the world and deny it access to nuclear weapons. That more modest aim, still worthwhile and deserving, must become our objective, even if Iran is allowed to perpetuate horrible harm on its own people and refuse regime change. By scaling back our war aims, we can still succeed at the key task, curbing Iran's ability to inflict massive global harm, and emerge victorious in this war with our president, his ratings, and our party intact. We cannot stop Iran from hurting the world economy, but we can stop it from humiliating us and wrecking the global economy, and that will be good enough.
So basically, if we see them going towards us with their terror, we take care of them. But as far as their regime, stay back and hope for the best and try to work it in, and whether we talk to them or not.
Destroy their capacity.
Right. To do their terror.
Yeah, that's it. It's not just a question of scaring them. It's a question of actually physically destroying their capacity.
What's they doing now?
Kill the missile launchers, kill the missile manufacturing facilities.
Their army.
Get rid of their army, get rid of their navy, get rid of their officer corps, and then let them be a helpless, sputtering giant.
Yeah.
But don't let the destruction of that regime or changing its mind be our goal in this war. Because so many presidents have lost because they didn't realize that the Viet Cong in Vietnam and the Ayatollah in Iran and the Hamas
they dig
would
in.
Never be reasonable.
And they dig in.
Exactly. And that's the thing I'm most afraid of here.
Well, I'm glad you sent this to him and you're talking to him.
Yeah, and this program is part of that. I want him to hear it, and I want him to hear it from me. While this is going on, there's a major earthquake taking place in Washington on the question of whether the Supreme Court will end race-based congressional districts. Liberals are getting nervous about November's midterm elections after the Supreme Court handed Republicans a huge victory, which could signal how the judges might rule on a pending Voting Rights Act issue. And this is absolutely crucial. On Monday night of this past week, the High Court ruled on a gerrymandering case and paused a lower court order that would have required New York to redraw its congressional maps in an effort to aid black and Latino voters. That is, redistrict so that more blacks and more Latinos get elected. Judge Samuel Alito, opposing that decision, called the original ruling, which was reversed, unadorned racial discrimination. This is a massive victory for Republicans in more ways than one. Not only does it serve to preserve New York's 11th congressional district, the only district in the city held by Republicans, but it also hints that the Supreme Court may be inclined to strike down part of Voting Rights Act. Such a ruling would eliminate race-based districts and with it a significant portion of Democratic seats in the House. The New York Times was forced to admit that the most recent ruling was a Republican win, but the liberal panic is only beginning to set in. The real affair emerged when the authors of the opinion linked it to the case of Louisiana versus Calais. The main question in that case, which will be decided momentarily, is whether Louisiana violated the Constitution when it created a second majority-minority district. If the answer is yes, it would scramble the country's congressional maps. Mother Jones, another left-wing outlet, talked about it can have huge implications. Alito is essentially saying that districts drawn under the Voting Rights Act or other state and federal laws to remedy centuries of racial discrimination are as racist as the racism itself was meant to rectify. Liberals and their allies are scared stiff about losing nearly 24 House seats as the midterm elections are approaching. The best comment on this was made by Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts. He said, and I thought it was just terrific, he said the way to end discrimination based on race, the way to stop discrimination based on race is to stop discriminating based on race.
It's so true.
That's what Roberts said. So any kind of discrimination that tries to bend over backwards and permit that and insists on racial discrimination to aid blacks and Hispanics and to aid minorities really helps it. The way to stop discriminating based on race is to stop discriminating based on race.
Yeah.
It seems clear that the Supreme Court is leaning toward ending the practice of race-based districts because the law has done its job. This provision of the Voting Rights Act has been in place since 1965. That's over 60 years. When will it end? It seems that the end is finally coming to an end.
You know, Morgan Friedman had an interview with Don Lemon, that idiot. And Lemon said, "What do you think of racism?" And he goes, "There is no racism." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, look at you. You're doing well. Look at me. We're both making a lot of money. We're on TV right now. You want to end racism? Stop talking about it."
Yeah.
The same thing that he just said.
It is.
You want to end it? Stop bringing it up every time.
And the point was that in upholding the Voting Rights Act for decades, the Supreme Court has always said it's temporary. While we have a heritage of racial discrimination and slavery, we need this provision to make sure that this continues. But now what they're really saying is the time has come. Time has come. It's time for us to stop discriminating based on race in order to stop discriminating based on race.
Yeah.
And those lines are by Roberts, and I think they're going to dominate what the Supreme Court does.
It's common sense.
Is the true story behind the midterm elections coming up.
Did you see this thing about Mandami being so horrible? He basically put the prayer rugs, whatever you call them, in front of a 9/11 memorial. Here's what's her name. I think Gonzalez is her name. Listen to what she has to say. Let's see. I don't have my speaker on. Let's start over.
Country and just expect me to sit here and take it? Because we heard that Iran was like, all right, sleeper cells activate, and now it appears that we are under attack. Maybe letting all of these people in was not a good idea. Apparently, we don't like it being a first world country, and we're just importing people to eat on the floor. NYC firefighters angry after bosses and Muslim firefighters make startling change to 9/11 memorial area for Ramadan. Put their little prayer mats right in front of the memorial plaque. Coincidence or something more sinister? They are sending a message. Rubbing it in your face is the point because you can't say anything. I don't care if you call me an Islamophobe. I don't care if you call me racist. It's enough already. There need to be more people willing to go out and...
So, with that, we have on the rocks, Roxana Maria on the air. And what do you have to say about that, Rock?
Hi, Dick. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug.
Actually, everything you were talking about came to my mind with something that I watched the other evening. So my quote is, "The only clue to what man can do is what man has done." This quote was from 1946. To me, it represents all we need to foresee history is to understand its past. I watched the movie Nuremberg with Russell Crowe portraying Hermann Göring from the Nuremberg trials in 1945. Robert Jackson prosecuted. It was new territory from which laws became the bedrock of all future modern war crimes. But what I found the most interesting and the most disturbing was the findings of psychiatrist Dr. Douglas Kelly, who was brought in to study the minds of those who carried out some of the most horrific crimes in humanity. And so here we are, a nation divided. Some say we're in a war of evil versus God, where on our own streets, hatred of the United States has become a familiar chant. A recent example in New York City, the last Friday of Ramadan, they were flaunting their hate to burn everything in the U.S. down, for America to go to hell. And who are they? Organized under the banner of Islamic idealism, overlapping with their International Day of Outrage, supporting Hamas, fallen Iran, idealizing leaders of slaughter, torture, and destruction. Dr. Kelly wrote only one book on his foundings of the minds as such. It failed, and he never wrote another. However, he spent the last days of his short life being thrown off radio stations, off of platforms, with this message repeatedly. He said, I would say I'm quite certain there are people in America who would willingly climb over half the American public if they knew they could gain control of the other half. They stoke hatred, and it is textbook. And if you think the next time it happens, we'll recognize them because of scary uniforms, you are wrong. It will start as an ideology woven into a foundation which we were founded on, in God we trust. So I'll leave you with a quote by Jung. It hung over his home in Switzerland, a reminder to acknowledge the holy awe, it present and working in everyone's everyday life. Quote, whether summoned or not, God will be present. And it is up to all of us Americans to protect the sacredness and sacrifices, to not allow our nation's foundation in God we trust to be in any way changed. Challenged, yes, if you will, but never silenced. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.
And
listen,
yes.
Rock, stay on the line. We got to take a break. We want to talk to you when we get back. Okay. Okay. We're going to when we get back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Roxanne, you were telling me earlier that this today was an anniversary of a very important statement by President and then at the time General George Washington. Would you amplify that on the air, Roxanne?
Yes, I was talking to Dick earlier, and I was reading one of his books, going to his library. And on this day, March 15th, in 1783, George Washington, it was called the Newburgh Conspiracy, they were considering overthrowing Congress after not getting paid for nearly a year in a military coup. So Washington gave the officers an emotional speech. He brought them to tears. And then I'll let you go from there with that, because you were familiar with it. Amazing.
He gave George Washington gave a very moving tribute, and basically put an end to the coup that the officers were threatening. The coup is called the Newburgh Conspiracy, and the officers of the Colonial Army said, unless we're paid, we may march on Washington and take over Congress. And that was a terribly serious threat. And Washington, then General Washington, went to address the officers. And as he was speaking, he spoke about the importance of their getting paid and pled for patience and said they would be paid, and talked about the importance of a democracy. But at the end of his speech, he took out of his pocket a piece of paper and began to read from it. And he put the paper down, took out his spectacles, his eyeglasses, wiped them clean, and then resumed reading. And he said, you will forgive my use of my spectacles, but in addition to becoming gray and aged, I'm losing my eyesight in defense of the service of my country. And that absolutely, from this man who was 6 feet 3 inches tall, huge, weighed 200 and something pounds.
It was awesome.
Pure muscle.
Yes.
And the admission of any kind of physical limitation was so moving and so incredible that the officers themselves really began to weep. And that killed the Newburgh conspiracy.
The guy was so
Immediately.
cool.
Immediately.
Yeah, it was immediate.
But
and I think...
there's another point your excellent From the Rock really raised for me, and I want to talk about Carl Jung, Jung, who was often cited with Sigmund Freud as being the founder of modern psychiatry. And everything is either Jungian or Freudian in the way students of psychology look at the human mind. Yeah. And Freud basically said the way people act is determined by their sexuality, by their childhood, by their experience, and by factors that they cannot change. And it's the subconscious mind that controls us. Right. And Jung came along right after Freud. In fact, he was a contemporary. And he said, no, that's not it. There's a spiritual force that drives human beings, and wanting to be like God and to be part of God. And that force is more important than the subconscious and more important than anything else. And it really married, those two comments married the study of the subconscious with the need for idealism and love of God and moral principles. Morality and psychology got married in that moment. And I just thought I would bring that up.
Dick. And may I add something? Excuse me, I'm sorry. I wanted to add that there was something else I came across. He had written a book called Synchronicity. And Robert Kennedy, during a part of his life when he was trying to regain his own faith, saw that book laying on a table and read it by Jung. And it was in that book, after World War II and that horror, that quote and others brought him back into his faith. So it is very interesting.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, I saw it last evening.
There's a great quote that Robert Kennedy liked to cite, and Jack Newfield, who is a writer who is very close to Kennedy, talked about it after Kennedy's assassination. It's a quote by the poet Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he said, Emerson was talking about people who are careerists and self-focused and looking for more money and more advancement. And he said, they did not know, and those clinging to the ladders of their careers did not know, that if one man take a stand upon his principles and there endure, this huge world will come round to them. That's always just been inspiring and was the basis of really of Jungian philosophy.
And I wasn't talking about President Kennedy. I was talking about Bobby Kennedy now. And he also was, under the influence that people who had faith actually healed faster, young, in his studies, in sickness in the hospital. So it all comes together.
Once again, thank you, Rock. Once again, the power of the subconscious mind. Speaking of books, I read a book, I think in the 7th grade, a teacher gave me, and ever since I believe this, the power, I think it was Dr. Joseph Murray or Murphy, I'm not sure I think it was Murphy, Dr. Joseph Murphy, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Amazing. Anyway, just to speak of that, like he was saying. Anyway, what's next? The massive shock to global energy price due to Iran war. The conflict in Iran is causing a massive disruption in the global oil supply and sending energy prices skyrocketing. It's unclear how long this disruption will last and therefore how long the markets will be squeezed and how high prices will ultimately go. The absolute disruption of flows through the Strait of Hormuz is by far the biggest disruption the world's oil market has ever seen. This is Mark Finley said this, a non-resident fellow in energy and global oil at Rice University. Finley, a former senior U.S. economist at BP, added that the key question is how long-lasting it'll be. After the initial U.S. and Israel strikes on Iran, oil shipments with the nearby strait effectively halted squeezing supplies. About 20 million barrels of oil per day, approximately a fifth of global daily consumption, flows through the strait, which is near Iran. Last week, Tehran declared the strait closed and said it will attack any ship that tried to pass through it. I don't know how Trump's going to handle that. He's going to handle it. Oil prices initially jumped last week about $80 a barrel up from $70. That's because he said both sides seemed to be telegraphing over the weekend that they were prepared to continue to fight. Gasoline prices are also on the rise. The national average price of gas is around $3.50 a gallon on Monday, up nearly 50% over a course of a week. As if the world was facing a supply shock, Andrew Lippow, president of Lippow Oil Associates, said, "We're heading that way. Now that we're losing 20 million barrels a day of supply, that is a shock to the system because there's no readily available source other than the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to make up for the shortfall, and those reserves are limited," he added. Tom Clauser, chief oil analyst for Gulf, said that barrels being taken off the market are much more serious than the disruption caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's worse in terms of molecules threatened. I don't know what that means. It's worse
the amount of oil threatened.
All right. Clauser said, referring to hydrocarbons that make up oil. He said that at its worst, the Russian-Ukraine conflict may have impacted approaching 1 million barrels a day, while the consequences of the Iranian conflict are much higher. But he added he doesn't expect the disruption to last quite as long. In my heart of hearts, I believe that there are smart people on both sides of the aisle in Washington, and that people will realize that you absolutely have to have that strait open for anything approaching reasonable economies and economic growth. Lippow said prices would continue to rise for the duration of the conflict in Iran. As the conflict drags on, prices are going to increase because the supply situation deteriorates, he said. The administration is indicating that this conflict could go on for several weeks. Lippow said he expects the national average gasoline price to rise an additional 20 to 25 cents per gallon, bringing the national average gas about $3.70. I got to say, this had to happen. Trump had to do what he was doing. I think we're annihilating the biggest terrorist regime in the world, right? So, all right, so we pay an extra $5 a week or $20 a week. That's tough. It's not easy for everyone, but this had to happen.
Damn right. And, it's when he attacked the island, Krug Island.
Right.
It was kind of like attacking the roots, not just the leaves of the terrorism plant. And by going after the roots and uprooting them, we saved the world for the future.
Wow. He pulled out the stumps.
Yeah, he did.
Wow.
And I think that's crucial. The important thing is for us to realize that as we are doing that we must not confuse regime change with uprooting the stumps.
As you said earlier.
Yeah.
Right. Not forget about regime change, but don't let that be the primary reason for doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and recognize that we can achieve our goals even if those ayatollahs stay in power in Tehran.
If they don't have any power to attack us, it doesn't matter who's there. That's
precisely.
Right.
And
if she's a really bad cook, it doesn't matter if you're not eating her food.
Sometimes
spoken like an Italian.
Sometimes we get confused and we say that we need to kill this regime like we did with Maduro.
Well, hold on. Before you started talking about this today, I said that. Now you've changed me up a little bit.
Yeah.
My mind is going towards what you know what you're trying to do.
We can have our worst enemy in Iran, and we can have it in the government there. But what we can't allow is for that regime to get nuclear weapons, or for that regime to
have a strong
allies and military and Navy and Air Force and intelligence, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. Think about Afghanistan in history, okay? After 9/11, we decided we had to get rid of bin Laden, and we eventually did.
Right.
But the more immediate thing that we did was that we dismantled the Taliban's capacity to wage world war. And yeah, the Taliban's back in power in Afghanistan, and that's too damn bad. And if I lived in Afghanistan, in particular, if I were a woman, I would go crazy about trying to stop that. But as an American looking at it, what was important was not so much that we left the Taliban in power in Kabul, but we stopped it from having power over America.
Right.
And we did that by eliminating their diplomatic corps, eliminating their Air Force, eliminating their Navy. When
you say eliminating the diplomatic corps, what? The
ambassadors, the embassies.
Right.
Each of these embassies were the core of terrorism. And we eliminated that.
Okay.
And that was enough. And it didn't matter if the Taliban was in charge in Kabul or not. What mattered was what was its military capacity to hurt us.
Right.
And when we stopped that and we put that out of commission, we won. And ultimately, we won in Afghanistan.
Oh, this is great.
We had to withdraw, and it was stupid, and it was horrible how it was done and all of that.
Yeah.
But the point is, there has not been another 9/11, and there probably won't be. There are terror cells, there are sleeper cells, there's all that stuff. But we have eliminated the capacity of the terrorists to really hurt us. And that's what we have to do in Iran, and that's what we're doing now.
And that's why we cannot vote any more Democrats into the administration, because they let those borders, they opened up those borders, and now we don't know who's here, what kind of sleeper cells we have here.
It's worse than that, Doug. They're stopping the funding of DHS.
Yeah.
Right now. And we not only don't know who is in, we don't know what they're planning.
Well, hold on. Just because they're stopping that funding doesn't mean that, well, Noam's not there anymore. Doesn't mean that we're not going to stop these people from coming in. What are you saying?
Well, it stops us from having the intelligence that's necessary. I mean, let me tell you the saga of the Brooklyn Bridge. I've told you this, and I've told Kelly, whose father did this.
Yeah, Ray Kelly.
Yeah, right after 9/11, we got information that there was another terror attack coming on the Brooklyn Bridge. And Kelly, the police commissioner, flooded the bridge with agents and to try to deter an attack. And the Homeland Security folks told the New York Police Department, we're picking up a lot of chatter about the Brooklyn Bridge. Apparently it doesn't translate well into Arabic. And we heard somebody say that they're going to hit the Brooklyn Bridge. And then a couple of weeks later he said it's too hot at the Brooklyn Bridge because of the cops we had deployed there. And we can't hit it now, but we will eventually. And as a result of that, Kelly in the police department commissioned a study by an engineering firm, the kind of study the Democrats would not permit now because they wouldn't fund it.
Right.
And they hired an engineering consulting firm to say, if you wanted to destroy the Brooklyn Bridge, how would you do it? And they worked at it for a couple of days, and they came back and they said there's a building at the foot of the Brooklyn Bridge on the Brooklyn side, which is used to control the operations of the lighting on the bridge. And it could easily be taken over. There's a little padlock on it.
I think it is actually the footing of the bridge has a room in it, I think.
Yeah,
it's not a building. It's part of the bridge.
That's right.
Right.
And exactly. And and as a result of that warning, Kelly flooded the area with cops, installed new locks and new human infrastructure, not just locks, to protect that building. And then a couple of months later, there was a raid where we raided the home of the terrorists who were planning the operation. And in their home in Brooklyn, there was a map of where to hit the bridge, how to hit it, and how to disable it.
Schematics, exactly.
Exactly mirroring the finding that the Kelly study had predicted. So that's the kind of stuff that's not happening now because there's no funding. If there's a terror attack, they'll shoot the terrorist dead. And you've seen a couple of examples of that in the last 3 days. But will they be able to do the long-term research? Will they have the analysts? Will they have
the intelligence
to stop a future attack? I am not sure that they will. And I think the Democratic opposition to the funding of DHS, which they have made a squabble over what are the rules of engagement and who can you arrest and all of that, is so minor.
Whose side are they on?
Is so minor compared to the basic question, which is, can we protect America? And by cutting off this funding, they're saying, the Democrats are saying no. And that's why it's very crucial that the Democrats lose this fight.
What is their reasoning for cutting this funding?
Because they say we want to stop the DHS from ruthless tactics. We don't want to see more people killed, like in Minneapolis. And
unless it's Americans being killed by a terrorist. That's different. Right.
But the point is that they're saying that they're saying we're not going to fund any of DHS.
Is the ICE thing? Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly.
Oh,
and right now we're seeing it as related to how we deal with terrorists, like in Minneapolis.
Wow.
But the more relevant thing is, how do we stop Americans from being endangered, and how do we let ICE continue to do its job as excellent as it is done?
Get rid of the Democrats. All right, we have to take a break, and hopefully we get rid of some Democrats during the break.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
Dick, just to come back to the last thing we were talking about. The Democrats, they want to defund this thing here because what are they getting out of this? I mean, they want to, don't they want to protect, our country? What are they getting votes from elite? What are they doing here?
The Democratic Party came to a fundamental conclusion as a result of losing the last election in 24. And that was, after winning in 20, if they won, and definitely losing in 24, they came to the conclusion that they can only win the election by cheating, that they can only win national elections in the future by having fraudulent votes cast by non-citizens or by dead people or by mail-in ballots. And that's why Trump is as adamant as he is in saying he's not going to sign anything until the Republicans pass the vote.
The SAVE Act? Is it
the SAVE Act?
The SAVE Act, right. All right, let's talk about this. The Justice Department says it has uncovered hundreds of thousands of deceased voters and tens of thousands of non-citizens on state voter rolls as federal officials push to review election systems ahead of 2026. Now, I'm worried. This just says to me, I'm going to become a Democrat when I die.
Yeah, right.
That's the only problem I see here. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, told the news that the findings have already emerged even though DOJ has gained access to less than half of the nation's voter database. Wow, that is disturbing. Dillon said the review has already turned up deeply troubling numbers. We're finding tens of thousands of non-citizens on the voter rolls, hundreds of thousands of dead people on, this is sick, of dead people on the voter rolls, and duplication registrations between states. She said those figures were found before DOJ gained access to every state records. This is amazing.
When they get the full records, it's going to be even more.
So it's basically they're dying to win.
Yeah, right. Look, there are two basic things that Americans do not realize about the Democratic Party. And I'm saying this, as you know, as a fairly prominent former Democrat. Got a Democratic president reelected.
Prominent?
Yeah, got a Democratic president reelected. But the party has fundamentally come to the conclusion, number one, that they can only win the elections by cheating. Number two, that to cheat massively, they need to let massive numbers of illegal voters into the country and kill any means of verifying their citizenship. And thirdly, that they have got to use the flaws in our voter registration system to win elections. And Trump is basically coming back and saying, okay, we're going to pass the SAVE Act, and that's going to stop this strategy in the bud. And he's saying that is more important than anything else. And that if it means we have to stop filibusters, we'll do that. It means we have to start them, we'll do that. We'll do whatever it takes to stop the Democrats from taking over the country by letting illegal people vote.
And Brandon Gill, a friend of ours, you got to look at he's a congressman, and you have to see, like, he won't vote on anything else until the SAVE Act gets voted on and passed. Look into this guy, Brandon Gill. He's really amazing. I just wanted to bring that up because
his father-in-law is Dinesh D'Souza, who did the movie about illegal voting. What was that called?
I don't know.
The one about the voting machine.
I remember. But Brandon is fantastic. I get him on Facebook. They pop up because you like one of his things that he said. He's really amazing. He went to Crockett, whatever her name is, and said, really? And he went out her so well. He put her down.
Well, I have a long history with Brandon Gill. I worked very hard with his father, Dinesh D'Souza. And when Gill first ran for Congress in Texas, nobody knew him. And I called President Trump and told him about Gill. And as a result of that phone call, Trump endorsed Gill in a crowded field in the Democratic primary, in the Republican primary. And I'm very proud of that.
He's a good guy.
The polling shows that the base is staying with Trump. He enjoys the most loyal supporters. The CPR poll tracker clock stated that 85% of the Republican vote has stayed with Trump. Even as the base stays with Trump, there's ample evidence that they're less enthusiastic about showing up at the polls when it comes to other Republicans. Trump's approval rating was tempered during the first year of his second term due to his slowly falling economic mood. It's beginning to rise since the State of the Union speech, and the decision to launch air and naval strikes against Iran to curb its nuclear weapons development. In the past 2 weeks, which spans Trump's highly rated State of the Union address and the decision to launch an attack on Iran, is critical to its pursuit of nuclear weapons. President Trump's approval rating has been steadily rising. The Harvard-Harris X poll, which is the best poll there is, found Trump's approval rating sitting at 46%, with Trump earning a modest rise in support across economic issues. 52% of voters said in the post-State of the Union survey that the economy is better today than it was under Biden, and that number is up 5 points in the last month. The survey found that voters are finally beginning to feel relief from Biden-era inflation, with 51% of the voters saying the economy is strong today, up 2 points in a month, and a full 8 points from November of 2025. Overall, Trump's approval rating across a Real Clear Politics average is beginning to tick up, with Trump sitting at an approval rating of 43%, up from 42% the month before. This is the political analysis, and that's the background of what the Democrats are doing. It reinforces their desire to cheat. It tells them that they can't win this election coming up in 2026 legitimately. They can only do it by having dead people vote and having people vote in multiple jurisdictions and tampering with the mail-in ballot system. And that's why Trump feels the SAVE Act is so important. And that's why he is literally willing to bring the country to a halt to get that thing passed.
Good. All right, when we come back, first I want to just give you the number, 800-848-9222. That's the call-in number, 800-848-9222. And when we get back, I think we're going to have Sandra on when we get back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. The name of the movie I was groping for that Dinesh D'Souza did, and his son, Brandon Gill, is now in Congress pushing his agenda, was called 2,000 Mules.
Right.
The film.
Somebody text me. I don't have your contact, so tell me who you are that text me that. Anyway, let's go to the phones to the piano player, Sandra, in New Jersey. Hi, Sandra.
One of these days I'll play the piano. Hi, good afternoon. One of these days I'll play the piano. But today I was thinking about Mayor Mandani's wife. Her name is Rama Duwaji is her maiden name. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how you can pronounce that, but that's great.
Okay, so she is an illustrator, and she did an illustration in a magazine called A Trail of Soap by Susan Ab al-Hava. Now, this author is very, very anti-Semitic and had a lot of nasty things in the article about the Jewish people, like vampires, demons, ghouls, saying terrible things about the Jewish people. So Rama is doing illustrations in this article. So I asked myself, do you think maybe she should have been more sensitive and say, you know what, I'm going to pass on this particular piece of work because it's not something I want to promote.
And
so
she's the wife of the mayor of the largest Jewish city in the country.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct. I even have it in my notes. She should be a little more sensitive. But what's even worse, now, we all know that she posted many likes regarding October 7th, questioning did it really happen, and she was liking that it was a mass hoax. Well, I want to tell you something.
October 7th being the day of the massive Hamas strike in Israel.
1,200 people killed.
Started this war.
That's right. Now, there was a woman, she just was in the Post the other day. She's a surgical nurse. Her name is Miss Bliner. She was there that day when it happened. She was hiding in a camper for 7 hours, hearing women getting raped, screaming, stop, no. She saw it all, she heard it all, and she is so angry at this mayor's wife that she wrote this in the newspaper. She said, my message is simple. Political narratives never should cloud your judgment when it comes to the facts of October 7th. Real people suffered, they were raped, and they were killed. And then she goes on to say, I would expect any woman, especially Miss Mandani, to at least try to imagine, to close her eyes and picture the evil people breaking into her home, her safe place, assaulting her and her husband, and doing sexual violations to her in front of her family, and her children right before their eyes. This is exactly what happened with the women and the men of October 7th. And I got to tell you, Bruce Blakely, he called, he wants her to apologize for this liking that she liked. It's a lack of sensitivity and judgment, and if she's going to be the first lady, she should start to sense, more.
You know what this is, Sandra? This is political ideology, religious ideology, I'm sorry. And that trumps everything, all of the emotion, everything. They want the caliphate, the caliphate, and they want to take over. She doesn't care. It's all about this horrible thing they're doing, the Muslims trying to take over, and they don't care. We're infidels. This is horrible.
And
it is horrible.
And we have to also realize, which we'll talk about later in the show, that there is at heart a demographic war going on between Jews and Palestinians. And one of the most amazing stats in recent going on in the news is that the Jewish birth rate in Palestine, in Israel, has soared and passed the Islamic birth rate. And they understand what the stakes are here. And it's about time our Democrats in Congress understood those stakes.
It's unbelievable. We have a topic on that later. We're going to talk about that, too. Let's go to Marty in St. Augustine with Florida, I guess. Hey, Marty? Hello, Marty? No? Okay, Eduardo in Tampa, stay in Florida area.
Hello?
Hi, Eduardo. Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon, Doug and Dick. A couple of things. We definitely got to pass the SAFE Act, especially with what happened in Michigan. And I wanted to get your thoughts about, I see that the Navy, I haven't seen so much on television that they're using this. There's the laser that the Navy has, and that could be used to shoot down drones. I think we need to use that more.
Yeah,
I haven't seen too much in the news about that.
And it costs about $1.50 to use it.
I reported on that in our show 2 weeks ago, that Israel has developed what they call the Iron Beam. Not the Iron Dome, we know about that, but the Iron Beam. And the Iron Beam is a laser that shoots down drones and missiles in the sky. And the advantage of that is that it's very inexpensive, and you can keep reusing it. It's not like a rocket where it goes off and you have to build a new rocket.
Yeah, and they cost $500,000. Yeah,
and they understand that the Islamic strategy here is to bleed us financially by using very cheap weaponry that is very hard to replace and very expensive, and that makes it impossible for us to have that weapon.
Yeah, because Ukraine did it to Russia in the beginning before Russia started doing it back, but that's what he was doing.
That's right.
Thank you. Was it Eduardo?
Good comment, Eduardo.
Yeah, that was very good. So, do we have time for another? No, we do not. So, anyway...
I just want to inject this one. There is a significant chance that the new Ayatollah, who the terrorists selected to succeed Ayatollah...
He's got a boo-boo.
Is maybe in the ICU.
He's got a boo-boo.
According to news reports, who have circumvented Iran's near total internet blackout to smuggle information to exiled dissidents in London. Mohiba Khamenei is currently in the intensive care unit of Sinai University Hospital in Tehran's historic quarter. The report is grim. He's understood to have lost at least one leg and is believed to have sustained multiple internal injuries, possibly to his stomach or his liver.
We're going to talk more about this when we get back, but we're calling him Eileen right now because he's got one leg. So he leans.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
So this guy, he's got a boo-boo, and he lost a leg. So what do they call him? The ghost Ayatollah.
Right.
Iran's being governed.
I mean, they may literally have had to take someone out of the ICU to let him be the new leader of Iran.
Yeah, it's going to cost him an arm and a leg. I just can't help myself.
That's good.
You know, even if you guys don't laugh, I crack me up, and that's all that matters, Dick. China. Let's talk about China wants the Straits of Hormuz open. Okay, as the Iran war moves into a second week, China's top diplomatic Wang Yi is warning of a spreading conflict and calling for peace. But Beijing avoided direct criticism of Donald Trump ahead of the U.S. president's expected visit in China in early April. That may point to a surprising diplomatic role for China in negotiations during the war, as Weilin Deng, I don't say these names right, and Bernard Hakel write in Foreign Policy. China has interest in Iran, including investments of around $4 billion. Claims of $400 billion worth of Chinese investments in the country refer only to the amount that Beijing pledged to invest over 25-year period in 21. Remember that guy was pledging that? It's the Straits of Hormuz that generally critical for China, which sources roughly 45% of its oil via the Persian Gulf. Beijing's strategic oil reserves, which could last for around 6 months, gives it some breathing room, but it's already blocked diesel and gasoline exports. China has tried to negotiate passage for its ships through the strait with little success. It might seem difficult to get Trump to back down, but the strait's closure is sending shockwaves through the global economy, with oil prices spiking and markets falling. Then responding positively when the president said that the war might be over soon. The White House could chicken out of an unpopular war, though the economic damage might already be done. Trump does not chicken out. China might be surprisingly appealing partner to help strike a deal in Iraq. Trump is doing his best to court Beijing ahead of its upcoming meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in April, hoping for a headline-making trade deal. China has plenty of potential leverage in Tehran, not least because when the strait reopens, China will likely be buying the majority of Iranian oil. What would China want from this? Apart from the compelling need to reopen the strait, Beijing wants continuity in Tehran. In other words, an autocracy that includes people that Chinese officials know and have dealt with before, whether led by the new supreme leader, whatever his name is, one-leg man, or someone else. Mojtaba Khamenei. However, that depends on such people believing he's alive.
Being alive.
Yeah, right. Right. Some figures who have dealt with Chinese officials before, such as Ali Shamkhani, Iran's chief negotiator during the Beijing brokered deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, were killed during the first week of these strikes that we just had. The top Iranian diplomats working with Beijing have so far survived, including Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, I have no idea how I'm saying that either, and his deputy, another guy, as well as former diplomats with ties to China, such as Mohammad Javad Zarif. China's priority in a post-conflict scenario in Iran is likely to be providing the regime with financial and security lifelines and encouraging it to continue the brutal suppression of internal revolt. Talks with the Chinese officials after Iran's Green Movement, they saw the Iranian opposition as inspired by the CIA, blaming the uprising on U.S. plotting. Okay. But any peace deal would also depend on skill and experience that may be in short supply in China. Why is that, Dick? Why would the skill and...
Because we killed them all.
Yeah. The country saw an exodus of Middle Eastern academic experts to universities in the Gulf countries such as Qatar after 2017, as growing Islamophobia and political tensions over atrocities in Xinjiang made the study of Islamic societies dangerous and roles abroad more enticing. Beijing diplomatic corps, meanwhile, are overstretched and under-resourced as a result of Xi's ongoing purges. Since Foreign Minister Qin Gang, really these names? Qin Gang was purged more than 2 years ago. He has been replaced. Xi, who held the job before, was appointed to the more senior post of the Director of Foreign Affairs and has been doubling with his role. It's possible that China might be able to bring a wounded but resistant Iran to the negotiating table for a ceasefire deal, but it might also be trying to keep too many balls in the air. And like you said, their ideology, their religion, their caliphate is more important than anything. They don't care about money or their life or anything.
Trump says that unless he approves of the guy who ultimately is going to replace Khamenei, he's not going to last long. He didn't say he wanted a leg to stand on, but it's pretty obvious that that's the case.
It's going to cost him an arm and a leg?
Yep.
And it already cost him a leg.
Meantime, Hegseth says the Iran war is laser-focused on destroying Iran's nuclear program.
It's a laser-focused, maximum authority mission delivered with overwhelming and unrelenting precision, War Secretary Pete Hegseth told reporters Tuesday in a briefing. No hesitation, no half measures, he says. As President Trump declared yesterday, we're crushing the enemy in an overwhelming display of technical skill and military force. We will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. But we do so on but we do this on our timeline and at our choosing. For example, today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes in Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes, intelligence more refined and better than ever. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing. Hegseth said Operation Epic Fury is unlike the quagmires we saw under former Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. It's not even close, he said. Our generation of soldiers will not let that happen again, nor will this president who very clearly ran against those kinds of never-ending, nebulously scoped missions. Those days are dead. Instead, we're winning decisively with brutal efficiency, total air dominance, and an unbreakable will to accomplish the president's objective on our timeline. We stay locked on the target because here at the Department of War, that is our job. That's Hegseth. I love that guy. He's great.
Now, that statement by Hegseth, I think maybe a response to the column that I wrote. It may be Trump's way of answering back and saying, I get your message. This is not going to be a never-ending war. We're not going to wait for the regime to holler uncle. And we won't try to kill them. What we will try to do is make sure that they can't kill us.
Right.
And that's an acceptable war aim, and that's our job, and we won't stop until that's done.
Basically depleting their military.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Remember that a couple of days ago, Trump said that the war in Iran was almost over, that we had largely accomplished our objectives.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to urge to become the policy, that declare victory and move on. Eliminate their capacity to blow up the world, eliminate their capacity to blow up the world economy, eliminate their capacity to be terrorists and sink our ships and hurt our bases, but don't care who remains in power in Tehran.
I want to take a call from Michael in Rockaway Beach. Hello, Michael in Rockaway Beach.
Hey, guys. Thank you for taking my phone call, Dick and Doug. I've been thinking about this and struggling with this concept that Islam is a religion and as such is protected under our system of government, under our Constitution. But Islamist beliefs are diametrically opposed to our way of life and our Constitution. And the disturbing thing is that the poll numbers for many Muslims, the majority of Muslims in this country believe that Sharia law should be imposed at some point. It's very disturbing, some of the poll numbers. How do we address this issue, this very, very dangerous issue?
Yeah, well, a couple of points. First, there is very little Islamist population in the United States. We're not France, we're not Germany, we're not Denmark. The number of Islam adherents in the U.S. is very small.
What do you think that percentage is, Dick?
Well, they're about
5%?
It's about 3%, 2 to 3%. And among Jews, it's about 8% Jewish in the U.S. But there really is not a large body of Islam adherents in the U.S. Trump has stopped it from growing, and he's cut it off entirely at the moment. The other thing to bear in mind is don't confuse the constitutional protections about freedom of religion from the need of homeland security to stop Islamic terrorists from operating in the U.S. When you get to the part of Islam where they're going to wipe out the enemy, and that enemy is us, there ain't no constitutional protection for that. And we need to realize that. But thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you, Michael.
Really
very good. How about Joanne in New Jersey?
Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Joanne.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for taking the call. I love your show every Sunday. Listen, I and many others, including hosts on Fox, Laura Ingraham and such, are very worried about President Trump going to China for his safety and security. Is there a way he can be meeting with Xi Jinping in a neutral area instead?
That's interesting. My normal reaction is to say don't worry about it, because the U.S. Secret Service is fantastic at protecting the president. But given what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and given the aggressiveness of Donald Trump and the need to get past him if you're part of the Chinese communist government, I would worry about that myself. And I think that it's entirely possible that Trump cancels that visit. Because I think I share your concern, and anybody who's rational looking at the environment would share it too. And I think there may be some developments on that.
One more. I'm going to take.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Go on, Joanne.
No, I'm glad because he listens to you, Dick. So I'm happy that you have the same feeling. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. And let's just go to Richie in the Bronx. I want to hear this, Richie. How are you?
Good afternoon, Dick and Doug.
Hey, Richie.
Regardless of what happens in the Iran war, at some point the oil will eventually come back on market. The Straits of Hormuz are not the only route, just the preferred route. Other routes would be more expensive, but not unacceptably so. As a matter of fact, insurance costs might come down because you wouldn't have to worry about hostile actions by Iran.
That's interesting.
That's a brilliant point.
That's very interesting.
What's your name?
Richie from the Bronx.
Richie from the Bronx.
Yeah, you feel free to call the show anytime you want.
No, that was really good. Insurance rate. But keep going, Richie. What does the Bible tell us?
Well, I'm not too familiar about what the Bible tells us.
Okay.
But I guess that's about all I have to say.
Yeah,
that was great. That was great. You know, they wrote that in the thing, Richie from the Bronx, the Bible tells us what will happen in a war.
Yeah.
So sorry about that, Richie. Right. That was interesting, though. Insurance rates will come down. They got to be astronomical because of that.
And then Trump has said he'll defend the Straits. Yeah. And I think that could be a big factor. You're right. Well, switch back to domestic stuff. The real wage growth in the United States is accelerating. And we need to understand that, particularly in view of the renewed threat of inflation because of the war. For American workers, the most important story is not simply lower inflation, it's real wage growth. Since Trump returned to office, wages have risen significantly faster than prices. Private sector workers are now ahead of inflation by roughly $1,500 a year, reversing real wage losses experienced under Biden. The gains are even stronger in key blue-collar sectors that form the background of Americans' economy. After years in which Biden inflationary inferno eroded American purchasing power, the Trump economy is delivering something Americans had almost forgotten: stable prices combined with real wages. Absolutely crucial. And we need to bear that in mind as we approach the midterms. It's not only has inflation cooled, it clearly has, even though it might spike at the moment because of the war. But the point is that real wage growth has been enormous. The average American, and just stay with the statistic, the average American family made $4,500 a year more in income this year under Trump than they did in the last year under Biden.
You mean in this 1 year, the first year of Trump,
you made $4,500
up $4,500
adjusted for inflation.
Wow!
So that is key. That is absolutely fundamental. And it's why Trump will win the midterms, I believe.
And, you know, when we come back, I want to talk about New York City. He wants to make the minimum wage $8 million an hour. And we're going to talk about that when we get back, just to be a great segue. All right, when we get back. Thank you.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. The Veterans Administration is initiating a new policy that is really important as you walk around the streets of New York or any city. It is expanding the ability of the VA to legally force homeless vets into care and into housing, to force them to get off the street and to go into care.
All right, start over again. How would they say it again?
The VA is saying that it is initiating a program to give aid to homeless veterans by expanding the legal power to commit the homeless to care. If the cops find the guy sitting on the street in freezing weather, it's legal now, and administration policy to arrest them, drag them in, and make them stay someplace warm.
So this is federal. Any state,
federal.
They can go.
That's right.
Wow,
That's right.
Interesting.
And it's really important because it's one of our key issues, which is the conflict on the one hand of our desire to help the homeless, and on the other hand the desire to make sure they don't freeze to death.
And their constitutional rights.
When Mandami, during the cold snap we had in January, would not bring people in because they're civil.
19
people died. It highlights that issue.
This guy's a disaster. And now he wants to raise the minimum wage. New York City stands to make a decision about his minimum wage that can only hinder growth, create layoffs, and result in price hikes. The City Council recently introduced a bill to set the minimum wage at $30 an hour. How's a mom and pop store going to handle $30 an hour? Democratic City Councilwoman Nancy Nurse put the $30 for our city legislation forward. The outlet laid out the wage like a scheme from the bill. The wage hike scheme for the bill. Businesses and franchises that employ more than 500 people must pay $20 an hour in 27, $23 in 28, $26 in 29, and $30 by 2030. Small employers have a different roadmap with a $19 minimum in 27, $21.50 in 2028, $24 in 2029, and $27 in 2030, and $29 in at least you have some time. This is if they can adjust and compensate hire and fire.
The best comment was by Melissa Fleischert, the president of New York State Restaurant Association. She said, "We feel like we're at a tipping point with consumers with respect to price hikes that would offset higher wages."
In other words, consumers are going to have to tip more.
She says there's only so much you can charge for a slice of pizza or a cheeseburger.
Yeah. The Wall Street Journal also reported comments by Mo Chan, who had a coffee and tea company in Queens. As much as I would like to pay $30, we don't have that kind of money. According to the New York State government website, the minimum wage for the city is set at $17, seeing a 50-cent increase at the beginning of 26. Although the Wall Street Journal said food delivery drivers who make $21 under 21.44 under other regulations are not impacted. 1.68 million workers stand to see an increase. The outlet said Democratic Mayor Moran Mandani unsurprisingly supported the $30 a wage during his campaign. In April of 24, California passed a $20 minimum wage for fast food workers, and the effects were immediate. The New York Post reported that chains like Burger King saw menu items like the Texas double Whopper go from $15 to $16, almost $17, a 12% increase. Citing a survey by Berkeley Group noted that 98% of fast food restaurants said they raised menu prices, 89% reduced employee hours, 73% limited employee shifts or overtime, and 70% reduced staff or consolidated positions. Those are staggering results from a policy that economically inept leftist public officials claim is beneficial. Business will not be able to handle it. Plus, when you get a minimum wage job, you're not staying on that job forever. I mean, there's some people that will and whatever. You're looking for the next step. Yep. You're always looking for the next. You want to be a manager, or you want to open up your own business. Yep. You know, so that's...
And bear in mind that Trump has made much of that unnecessary by permitting overtime to be not taxed and tips not to be taxed. So Trump is giving a private sector capitalist solution to these low wages.
Well, let me ask you a question.
The socialist solution is raise the minimum wage and cut back the jobs. The capitalist solution is let people keep their jobs but not pay taxes on the income.
Now, I heard, and I don't know this to be true or not, we have to look into it, that New York, there were states that don't have to buy into this taxing tip thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I heard New York is not doing it. Yeah. Is this true?
I'm not sure.
I'm not either.
I'm not sure. We should check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big beautiful bill leaves it up to states whether they. No. I'm sorry. I got it wrong, and I'm getting it right now. They have to do it in your federal taxes, regardless of where you live.
Not state.
But not the state tax.
Right.
And New York State has refused to let Trump's cuts on saying no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, has refused to let those changes happen on the state tax.
And what's that benefit? That they want that revenue of that tip money? You know what I mean? That's why they say no to that. How about give the revenue to the people, to the waitress?
Now, Doug and I are working on a campaign for Betsy McCoy.
Oh, she's so great.
For governor of Connecticut.
Hi, Betsy.
And her position is axe the tax.
Axe the tax.
In other words, refuse to let Trump refuse to let these increases in minimum wage be taxed away.
And by the way, hold on. Betsy2026.com. Betsy2026.com.
Yeah, we have a real chance to eliminate the state income tax in Connecticut.
Talk about before the tax and then after the tax came to fruition in 97, 99.
Yeah.
Who was it?
All over. The Weicker, who was the governor of Connecticut back then, had just lost his Senate seat in a primary. And he was determined to have revenge. And he did that by passing the state income tax. And
what was his revenge for?
He was defeated by the voters. And before I leave office, he said, I'm going to impose an income tax.
My God.
It's my legacy. What it really was his revenge. And that absolutely signaled the start of Connecticut's recession. Places that had profited by not having an income tax suddenly left the state, and we were left with huge negatives in Connecticut. Connecticut used to basically make its living off not being Massachusetts and not being New York. And because those states had high income taxes, Connecticut didn't. And because it didn't, it was able to thrive. Then when they imposed the state income tax, which is now 6.6%, it absolutely killed growth in Connecticut. And it was the reason why Connecticut went from one of the richest states in the country to one of the poorest states.
Yeah, Greenwich, Connecticut is absolutely superb. You go through Greenwich by the Showboat. It's not called the Showboat anymore. It's just absolutely beautiful. But anyway, Betsy 2026, am I correct?
Yes.
It's Betsy2026.com. Go on her site, pledge or give her $340. I think that's the maximum. That ain't nothing. That's the tip we usually use at a restaurant, Dick. $340. Betsy.
We'll give you the list of the restaurants we eat.
So the waitresses, hey, listen, what are you going to do? You got to take care of the waitresses, you know? Okay, where are we going here, Dick?
oil prices are rising, as you know, and gas prices. And the problem is that politically that could particularly hurt Trump with Hispanics. 2 weeks into Trump's decision to launch an attack against Iran and its pursuit of nuclear weapons, polls show Trump's approval rate ticking up among voters who rally around the flag. His latest net approval rating is up 2.2% since February 23rd. Voters are just beginning to feel relief from the Biden-era inflation. A Harvard-Harris poll from February 25th to 26th, conducted after the State of the Union, found 51% of the voters said the economy is strong. But the conflict with Iran is causing 20% of the world's oil supply to come to a standstill, and that could really hurt Trump's approval rating, particularly among Hispanics, coming at a crucial time when he's really found his footing there and is doing really well.
What about Venezuela, where he wanted to take their oil?
Well, that would be helpful given the problem we face with the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
But, it's a short-term solution. The real thing that's happening here is that Cuba is beginning to feel the pain. The reports today in the news are that there were massive demonstrations in Havana, stuff that has either not happened or more likely not been covered. And they are demonstrating about blackouts throughout the island and difficulties they're having in oil. And by cutting off Venezuelan oil and threatening to cut off Mexican oil, Cuba is being sent back to the Stone Age. And the chances for real regime change here are enormous, because it looks like Cuba may be subject to the same kinds of blackouts that ultimately lead to regime change in a positive direction. Now, there's a sobering warning by Condoleezza Rice, former National Security Advisor.
I love her.
And McMaster, who used to be our commander in Iraq, saying the objective that I see here is to render Iran a non-factor militarily in the region. In other words, to neuter Iran's military power in the region. And we see that in the sinking of their navy, the destruction of their air force, going after their missile capability, and of course after their command and control structure, quite deep into their command and control. If you can achieve the neutering of Iran as a conventional military threat, the weakening of its tentacles like the Shia militias and Hezbollah and Hamas, if you can prevent them from having a conventional shield for their nuclear capability or their nuclear ambitions, you have achieved something quite dramatic in the region. And that quote by Rice is really what inspired my column earlier, that if you can achieve those objectives, it's enough, and you don't have to stick around until the guy with two legs becomes the leader of Iran.
Guy with one leg.
Yeah, and just think of the factors. Sink their navy, destroy their air force, destroy their capacity to have missiles, go after their command and control structure quite deeply, neuter Iran as a conventional military threat, weaken its tentacles like the Shia militias and Hezbollah and the Houthis. If you can prevent them from having a conventional shield for their nuclear capabilities or their nuclear ambitions, then you've achieved something quite dramatic in the region. And that's from Rice, and that's absolutely important. Rice went on to say you can make the case that engagement here is essentially through the air. There's a little bit of confusion about regime change aspect of this, because it's very hard to change a regime from the air. And it's also very hard to shape the politics afterwards from the air. And so the first lines about giving Iranian people an opportunity to reclaim their future, that's fine. But one has to think a little bit more carefully and not talk too much about trying to determine the future of Iran if you're going to keep your objectives relatively limited and not deploy ground troops.
This is like your column.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. It's the same,
exactly.
who read who's first.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I'm quoting it on my show.
Okay, let's go to Frankie in Glendale, Queens, talking about Mandummy.
Gentlemen, this is an honor. I love your guys' show. My first time calling in.
Thank you.
I want to make a prediction. I believe that the drop-dead gorgeous First Lady of New York City will be with child or poop one out by the end of the year.
She's not drop-dead gorgeous, first of all.
Will they put a prayer rug for the kid?
A what?
A prayer rug under the kid?
Yeah, prayer rug under the kid.
Look, I could have used different words, but I didn't want to get bleeped out.
Yeah, I know. I say it all the time. It's horrible.
We don't beep.
You know, I know you guys have been talking about a whole different bunch of topics, and like, you know, they had that Ramadan thing or whatever there in City Hall.
Yeah.
Can the Christians you think the Christians can have
no
Christmas Eve Mass in City Hall with a live nativity scene?
You can't even have a nativity scene at Walmart in a public area. Forget about putting those rugs down over there. That's ridiculous. You know what I want to know? I think Sandra said that the wife is an illustrator. Now, I'm an illustrator for 40 years in New York City. And I would never, ever comment or judge someone's work. I'm dying to see it, and I hope it's what I think it is. You know what I mean? Because then I will. So, thank you, Frankie. I appreciate it.
I mentioned this earlier in the show. The number of annual Jewish births in Israel surged by 74% from 95 to 25, compared to a 21% increase of annual Arab births in Israel during the same period. So there were 140,000 Jewish births, and compared to 180,000.
No. The 2025 Jewish births, 140,000, were 76% of total births. 183,000 compared to 69% in 95. So it went from 69% to 76% up in Jewish births now. In 2024, the latest data, the Jewish fertility rate, 3.9 births per woman, is higher than the Muslim fertility rate at 2.5. It's higher than the fertility rates in all Muslim countries other than Iraq, Yemen, and the sub-Saharan Muslim countries. In 69, Israel's and Judea and Samaria, West Bank, Arab fertility rate was 6 births higher than the Jewish fertility rate in 2015. Both fertility rates were at 3.13 births per woman. Basically,
incredible with air raids going on, with people having to scurry the tunnels in the middle of the night.
We're going to have babies.
And with all of this threat, the Jewish commitment to maintaining the Jewish state in Israel and competing against the Arab state is actually winning the population.
Wow. That is, well, they have to. They know they're a small population. They know they have to build.
But it's hard to get an entire country of 10 million people to think strategically when it comes to something like birth rate.
Wow.
But you're seeing in Israel, what an accomplishment and what a statement of their desire to survive.
Wow, they really are amazing.
Now, speaking of survival, Starbucks is leaving Florida.
Well, you know, which one is that, Dick?
That's number 18.
18, Starbucks, right. We reported yesterday that Starbucks founder and billionaire Howard Schultz is hightailing it out of Seattle and relocating to Florida, just ahead of Washington State's new 9.9% millionaire tax that's racing through the state legislature. What we neglected to report is that the Starbucks is moving some of its operations out of Seattle to Nashville.
Which also doesn't have an income tax.
Right, so there you go. Pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a trend that...
Could I just say something?
Yeah.
Not to interrupt, or not to interrupt, is... I never go to Starbucks because I hate that coffee. I think it tastes like dirt. But this morning was really early, and they're open 24 hours. I went there this morning and read this while I was in Starbucks. So, all right, go on, Dick, because we got to take a break soon.
The Senate passed a sweeping housing bill that would make it easier to build and finance new housing while bolstering existing federal assistance programs.
You want to talk about
it after
when we get back. Thank you.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. The Senate passed a sweeping housing bill this week that would make it easier to build and finance new housing while bolstering existing federal assistance program. This is the real answer to homelessness. The plan would tackle a critical cost of living issue months before the midterm elections, where Republicans hope to keep control of Congress. The bipartisan bill still faces major hurdles as Republicans fight over what should be included. The bill would expand the definition of manufactured housing, so factories could build homes without the steel chassis. Factory-built housing is cheaper and faster to put up than other traditional stick-built homes. Other provisions of the bill will update the mortgage lending standards and update access to financing for manufactured housing. We have on the phone now Betsy McCoy, who we talked about earlier in the show. And Betsy is running for governor of Connecticut. And her platform is a very simple one. Axe the tax.
Axe the tax. We were just talking about it, Betsy.
Hey, Betsy, how are you?
Hi.
Thanks for calling in.
So glad to join you. Yes, I'm going to axe the Connecticut state income tax, and think about it. It's going to make Connecticut the tax haven of the Northeast. Think Florida without the palm trees.
Yep,
that's good.
And it's so important we're doing this. She's doing this in part because it's tax time now. And if you make $100,000 a year, which half of all families do, it's a $6,600 a year tax.
Uh-huh.
And if you make $200,000, it's a $13,000 a year tax. And we didn't have any income tax until when, Betsy? 1981? Is it?
No,
1991. I think you're making such a good point. And not only does eliminating the tax, axing the tax, put more money back in people's pockets, but they're going to earn more to begin with. The President's own Council of Economic Advisors predicts that in Connecticut specifically, eliminating the tax, axing the tax, will create a 27% increase in business startups. Think about it. All the people listening have always dreamed of starting a business. This will help them. And it will add, on average, $6,700 to the wage of the ordinary wage earner. So you're earning more pre-tax. It's not just that you're saving the tax dollars. You're also going to get a boost in your pre-tax salary.
It's tax time, Connecticut. Axe the tax. Now Connecticut taxpayers have to pay a 6.6% state income tax. Axe the tax. If you make $100,000, that comes to $6,600. Axe the tax. But if you make $200,000, it's $13,000. Betsy McCoy is a Republican running for governor, and she says, axe the tax. She points out that states with no income tax have the top-ranked economies, and states with income taxes come in near the bottom. Axe the tax. Betsy McCoy's proposal, as state revenues go up, require that every penny go to one purpose and only one purpose. Use the money to axe the tax. No extra state spending until we've axed the tax. Not one dime till the tax rate comes down, hopefully to zero. Axe the tax. Help her get elected at Betsy2026.com
to Betsy, right? Betsy2026.
That's right, Betsy2026.com. And you know what's amazing? The maximum donation allowed by law is $340. What a bargain compared with paying those state income taxes.
Right.
Yeah. And Betsy has an excellent chance of winning. With the state law that provides that the state will put up $20 million to a campaign for governor if enough people give $340 each.
Right.
And he only needs 1,000 of them, I think.
Now, Betsy,
she has a lot of it now.
Do you have a couple of things coming up in Connecticut on the 23rd? What dates and what are they?
That's right, and Dick will be at Dick will be the featured guest at these fundraisers let me just walk over here and take a look at this calendar. I'm going to announce the first one.
And you could come and sit with us and talk with us with Dick Morris. It'll be great.
That's right. Pretty exciting, right?
Absolutely.
And Doug
That's
will be
right.
there.
It's going to be
Doug
on March
DiSapiro will be
25th
there.
in Old Greenwich, Connecticut, March 25th. And come to the website, Betsy2026.com. All the information is there. You can donate, and you can read the whole plan. And we also have a map up of all the other states that are doing this. The smart states, as Dick just pointed out, are zeroing out their income tax, and they have flourishing economies. And the states with high income taxes have dying economies.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And the key point here in Betsy's plan is that she's saying don't eliminate the income tax and then scramble around how to replace the hole you put in your budget. Do it the other way around. Take the increased income that you're going to get as a result of businesses moving to Connecticut. And there is a big increase in businesses moving, largely because they're leaving New York.
And plus, when she's elected, they're going to come in knowing that the tax is going to be cut.
Yeah. And they're fleeing New York. Mondami's driving them out. And use that money to eliminate the state income tax. So the boom becomes permanent and Connecticut really can be great.
And one more thing before we have to go, Betsy. Just give us the dates again of these.
First fundraiser, and this is featuring Dick Morris, is March 25th. In Old Greenwich, Connecticut. Come to the website. We'll sign you up.
Beautiful.
And you'll get to hear Dick talk more about this. We're going to axe the tax and make Connecticut the tax haven of the Northeast. Florida without the palm trees.
Yep.
And you'll love Old Greenwich. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's in a beautiful art gallery. So it's Betsy2026.com. Come support this tax revolution.
We need you, Betsy. We need you.
See, I mean, the exact dynamic that screwed Connecticut when they imposed the income tax now will help Connecticut. Connecticut's the place that's not New York and not Massachusetts. And therefore, and now not New York City.
What did you say earlier to me? You were there when it came alive and we're going to be there when it dies.
Yeah.
The tax.
It's had a long history with the income tax.
Yeah. All right, we have to go. Betsy, thank you so much for calling in.
A pleasure to join you. Your show is a public service.
Bye now. So when we get back, I don't know, we're going to talk about more stuff.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
Hey, Dick, how about we go to Shannon in Long Island? Hi, Shannon in Long Island.
Hi, Dick and Doug. I wanted to know if there's any plan to introduce a bill into Congress to prevent anyone who was not born in this country to hold office, to hold political office.
Well, at state and local level, you can do that. You couldn't federally because the Constitution prescribes the requirements for serving in Congress or for being president. But you could do it at the state and local level. And when you look at the efforts of the Muslim community to take over entire states, like Minnesota and Minneapolis, that makes some sense. That's a heck of a good idea. Thanks.
One more. Go on, Shannon. Sure.
With Blakeman, with his campaign, why aren't the Republicans boosting his war chest? I understand Hochul has 8 million, and Blakeman only has 1 million.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's true, and you should give money to Blakeman.
Right.
When many Republicans dropped out, and Elise Stefanik decided she's not going to run for governor, and then Lawler decided he's not going to run for governor.
That's because Trump didn't endorse him.
Plenty of people gave up, and he didn't endorse him not because he didn't like him, but because he couldn't lose the vote in Congress.
Right, exactly.
And
no, he likes him.
We all assumed that this race was over, that Hochul would win. But now there's new life being breathed into the anti-Hochul campaign, the Bruce Blakeman campaign, which is by the wonderful actions of Mayor Zoran Mandami.
The contrast.
Nightmare.
Yeah, the nightmare.
Because he's proposing a 50% increase in property taxes in New York. So goodbye the Bronx, goodbye Portchester, goodbye any of that stuff, because they won't be able to afford to have multiple family housing, and a surge in homelessness. And it's policies like those that are calling attention to the very high taxes in New York and in Connecticut. The Mamdani election campaign put a new word on the political score. Affordability.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, but the big thing that makes life unaffordable is taxes. Property taxes and rent through property taxes. And what we need to do is to stop that from happening. And electing Blakeman is a very important part of it.
It's a great contrast between the two, Hochul and Blakeman and Mamdani. But listen, you mentioned Portchester. You talk about if people leave Portchester, or businesses go under because of that or close down. My cousin's got a great restaurant in Portchester. I got to mention T&J, Italian restaurant. You want to feel like you're at your mother's house or your grandma is great. You've been there, right, Dick?
It's great.
And Dick did a show there, too. He opened up his computer. Remember you did the show?
On top of my veal parmesan.
If you go there, you mention me and you talk to Ray, my cousin. Ray Sassano at T&J. What a plug. Hey, I better get some free food this week. So let's. You want to take another call, Dick?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with Patrick, and I think it's Indiana. Mamdani should be deported. No kidding.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes.
Hi, Patrick.
The reason I said Mamdani should be imported or deported is because he threatened to arrest Netanyahu because of international law, because of the World Court. Well, on Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning, James Flippin said that Mamdani in a staff meeting, he said, quote, "It's about time we incorporated international law." So that means that people in New York might be surprised if the international court says something is illegal that they're doing, that they may be prosecuted for international law, for breaking international law.
That's a very, very good point. Let me amplify what you're saying. The UN set up the International Criminal Court, and 180 countries abide by it, but not the United States. Reagan refused to let the U.S. abide by it. And if we don't agree to it, we can't be sued there. And Israel and a couple of other countries, about 10 other countries, reject jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. It was basically accepted to get the Bosnian Serbs out of control in Serbia, but it's now was been extended by the Arabs to try to go after Netanyahu, to go after the Israeli democracy. But the general point you're making is a key one. The Democrats are increasingly using world bodies like the International Criminal Court to propagate Sharia law and to promote policies that incorporate Sharia law into American law. And we're seeing that in cities and cities throughout the country and countries throughout the world. You got to understand that international law is not voted on by a legislature. International law is the result of court decisions made by international law courts.
Like precedents?
Precedents, exactly.
Huh.
And every time a precedent is cited, a new rule is cited by an international court, it sets up a precedent that could apply to everybody. And with the growth of sophistication of the Soros-like DAs throughout the country, and the willingness of Democrats to impose Sharia restrictions, you're seeing a real threat that Sharia law will take over, that the jurisdictions will allow it. In London, for example, they now permit very important measures that are allowed under Sharia law, but not anything else. There are places in London where you can't get a marriage unless it be under Sharia law.
Oh my God.
Or you can't get a divorce unless it be under Sharia law. And the system of precedent is such that you can get that passed without majorities in any legislative body. Another international court decision structures that.
Well, I was just about to say this is why we're not a democracy. We're a republic democracy. But you just axe that. Axe the tax.
Axe the tax, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, Dick Morris, it's been an honor to be here.
This has been a great show.
It's been an honor to be here with you. We have to say thank you so much on the rocks. It was so great.
That was such a
she is brilliant, though, isn't she?
That was wonderful.
She's cute, too, but she is brilliant. All right, Dick Morris, thank you. An honor. Thank you, Rocks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
No. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
No. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Dick Morris Show. You can hear The Dick Morris Show Sundays at noon. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.